Boss. Thank you, Chris.
Beg your
That's a useful
pardon.
reminder. I know you've put it up in the chat already, Chris, that we're being recorded, but verbally we should have reminded you.
Yes.
We are recording this meeting for the purposes of record keeping and to share occasionally afterwards across our platforms. So if you don't want to be seen in this recording, please feel free to take your camera off and mute yourselves. But other than that, we will be recording. All right, brilliant. So I'll get back to the point I was making, which was that through the many years of doing service delivery and facilitating kind of the APG on Fatherhood, what we and many of you who work in the field have come across is that there are many, many barriers that prevent fathers from being active partners and parents, to be fair, in the lives of their children. These barriers can include things like a lack of statutory paternity leave, poor support services, lack of affordable childcare, social stigma around the role that men play within their families, whether they reside with their children or whether it's after a relational breakdown. And whilst for some segments or some parts of society this is reducing, this is not true for everyone. And even for those sometimes with access to resources and their own internal toolkit of skills to be able to navigate life, it can be really tough if all of the ducks don't line up for dads who haven't got an existing arrangement to access their children to play the role they want to play or to know where to go for the support they need to be able to do. We need to do a lot more as a society to remove these barriers, not just us who work in the sector, but everyone. And we want to help support to create a policy landscape that supports fathers and their families. That's why we're here today. That's why Future Men is going to use this LinkedIn platform to host a range of speakers with expertise in various fields that all speak to themes that Chris will go into in more detail shortly. We want to understand how we can collate all the information, garner support and momentum underneath this heading, Agenda Dad. So Chris, I think now I'll hand over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Owen. So really to go from the top level, the purpose of this series of events, Agenda Dad, is to inform Future Men's approach to the All-Party Parliamentary Group on fatherhood. There's a lot of people in this room today who are doing fantastic work at the level of supporting fathers, and we'll hear from one of Future Men's practitioners later on. There's lots of great academic work that's going on. There's fantastic engagement. But in order to change the landscape for fathers at a universal level, it's in Parliament, it's in shaping policy that the work really needs to be done. And so, as Owen said, for 13 years, Future Men has been providing secretariat support for the APPG. And in those spaces, it's great. We get people who are like minds who come together, who are enthusiastic. And what we want to do is, rather than just have that activity happen in that space, we want to use in between the APPG meetings, which happen on a quarterly basis. The next one is actually next week. That's the 13th of September. For further information, please do visit the website, and we can send out information again via LinkedIn and through our emailing list. But in between times, we want to be having these active conversations, galvanizing all the output from them through collection of video that we're recording now, the comments in the comment list in the chat function that's live now, sharing it over social media so that we can widen the engagement with this topic. And that way we can take a unified voice towards the APPG rather than waiting for the APPG meeting in order to have these conversations. So as Owen said, the objective of Agenda Dad is about raising the bar at a universal level to create a better landscape for fathers at a policy level. So over the course of the next 9 to 10 months, we're going to be tackling 3 core policy areas, and inviting specialists and experts on these particular topics to be talking about where the gaps are, what they see on the ground empirically in terms of delivery of services, and how closing those gaps would benefit more fathers, particularly those who are at a less well served, who might experience marginalization or deprivation of some form. And these topics include mental health screenings for fathers. Fathers, especially during that perinatal period, from pregnancy up until the first year, are at increased risk of mental health problems, such as depression and anxiety. And we need to make sure that fathers have access to mental health screenings and treatment. We know that fantastic work has been delivered already in moving this topic forward, but that work is a platform to continue to push and look at how we can level that up. Fixed paternity leave. There's so much activity that's happening already around these spaces, but what we want to do is, again, it's about creating a galvanized voice, a cohesive voice that's backing up all the good work and not just working in silos. But paternity leave is absolutely essential for fathers to bond with their children and be active partners in their care. There's already, as many of you I'm sure are aware, an active campaign that's seeking to extend statutory paternity leave to 6 weeks at 90% of their pay. There are areas of paternity leave that need addressing, and through conversation with specialists, we'll be highlighting those areas and those gaps. But seeking this legislative change would support many more fathers to be active in their child's development, support their partners in practical care and returning to work, and empowering families, no matter what their family constitution is. So again, I stress this point that this is about raising the bar at a universal policy level. And then the last policy topic area that we're going to be addressing is birth registration, because it's very important that fathers are listed on their children's birth certificates, ensuring that they have legal rights as well as the responsibilities to the children. But we need to make sure that all fathers are able to register their children's births, and currently there are gaps to seal within that space. Now, having identified the particular policy areas that we're looking at, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge so much great work. So this is hardly an exhaustive list, but particularly in terms of Mark Williams, who is going to be one of the guest speakers, and the work he's provided around mental health screening for fathers. He has been a tireless campaigner and has really changed the game at that level of offering mental health screenings. However, there is another step that we can take. And probably once we have all brought our heads up to that level, the landscape will change, the horizon will change, and there may be some other things that we can all do. So Mark is going to be talking about that, as well as some other people in and around the space of mental health screenings. Pregnant and Screwed, Fatherhood Institute, Music, Football, Fatherhood. They are doing some fantastic work in their advocacy for fixed paternity leave. And the government is working to make it easier for fathers to also register their children's births. So there has been movement on birth registration. There's tremendous movement in the space of fixed paternity leave, statutory paternity leave. And as I said, there's already been tremendous movement in and around mental health screening. But we need to build on this work and continue to advocate for policies and support fathers. By supporting fathers, it's fathers for fathers, fathers as partners for the best interests of child development and for wider society. It really chimes actually with the core vision of Future Men, which is a better future for every man, for every boy, and everyone. So I'm going to hand back over to Owen, who's going to be talking about some of the segments of society that may benefit from this work.
Yes, thanks, Chris, and a great summary there. And I think whilst we as Future Men attend these meetings and are hosting these meetings, in some ways in a dual role, both in fulfilling our duties as secretariat to support the needs and inform the officers of the APPG, who are parliamentarians, and who, you know, we support the group at their behest. We also have particular interest because of our long service delivery history, particularly supporting men, fathers from marginalized backgrounds. We're a service delivery organization first and foremost. And most of our service delivery happens in London and the surrounding areas. We have a very diverse service user base. However, we also have some services, for example, our Future Dads Antenatal course, which is our most universal provision, which is open to men in any particular geographical area that we're delivering it, who are having a child. So therefore attracts quite a diverse range of dads, particularly those who are confident in seeking support and help. I'm really keen, and always have been as a practitioner working in a community space, that we are able to not only provide services at the acute end where people are facing change and difficulty, but also that we've got proportionately universal services that are able to engage people wherever they are along their journey and help introduce them to each other, help them understand the benefits or model from each other ways that men are working. What it also highlights for us in that space is that different fathers, different families have varying levels of capacity to understand and engage with the frameworks that govern the lives of them and their children, and are sometimes more harshly affected by the voids that exist in current policy around engaging men and fathers. So I'm really keen for us to not forget some of these less served or underserved groups, these groups that aren't so vocal or so able or don't have the agency to be able to so much stand up for their own situations, and being able to kind of, within a wider policy push, particularly around things like shared parental leave or benefits that are associated to work. There are lots of fathers we support who don't have established careers yet, who are working in sectors where, for example, if you're on a low income job or you're in an insecure job, part of the gig economy, 0 hours contracts, those fathers are very unlikely to take statutory paternity pay that's on offer, because actually it equates to less than the minimum wage. So actually the policy as it stands at the moment, practically in terms of the financial realities, doesn't apply, let alone if you've got an employer that, if you went and spoke to your employer and said, I want a couple of weeks off to support my children, where they're taking, well, take your weeks off, and when you're ready to come back to work, let me know, and we'll start paying you again. We've heard this time and time and time again over the years. So it's understanding how policy really practically affects certain fathers and men on the ground, whatever background they're from, understanding the geographical differences to people who live in a large metropolitan centre like London or Birmingham or Leeds, to those who are living in more rural settings where the actual statutory set of services available, the networks that are available to men, both within their own familial setups, their social setups, and within services, is a lot more disparate and unavailable to them. Where are men getting this information? Policy needs to step in, because there is a massive void that's being filled by dubious information sources, sometimes not UK-based information sources, which can lead to more problems for people like us who want to engage on the behalf of the well-being of men. In terms of affordable childcare, that's another problem for families, whether you're living together with the partner, with the mother of your children, or whether you are a non-resident parent. The cost of childcare can be debilitating, and can force some fathers to fulfill a more traditional role of provider and breadwinner, rather than maybe take up a more practical, hands-on parenting role that they would want to do just because of the necessity. Now, some people are like, well, that's the reality of living, but we have to understand that cost of living crisis, some other national policy events that have affected us, including returning to normal after the COVID break, really, really have, the effects of that have not been reversed. In fact, they've been compounded and made worse. And I think the longer term outcomes for children of supporting fathers really need to be pushed higher up on the agenda, both in existing policy and in new ones that we can present to the Parliament. So again, just to reiterate, we need to make sure that all fathers, regardless of their background, their socioeconomic, racial, cultural background, regardless of their relationship status, need to kind of need to be given the opportunity to be active partners in their children's lives, regardless of the relational status. That's not to say there aren't some challenges, but even there, we need to make sure that we've got policy rights so that where there are challenges in the way that families are made up, or sometimes the way they break down, that we've got the right checks, balances, and support in place to ensure that children benefit from men who are supported to be positively involved fathers, rather than deemed as risks or assets to be sidelined, hoping that they don't have a negative impact on the outcomes for their children. Chris, I'll hand back to you to give some more detail about how these events will work moving forward.
Fantastic. Thanks, Owen. So as I said at the beginning, the entire thrust of this Agenda DAD is to inform the approach to the APPG. So thinking about the outputs from this work and how we will share that. These meetings will be recorded and they will be placed on the Future Men's YouTube channel. There's already some fantastic resources on there, so I'd encourage anybody to go and have a look at the YouTube channel for Future Men. But we'll be placing the videos on that channel and then sharing them on our website and through social media. Today's attendance and turnout is fantastic, but of course there are many other people who couldn't make today, but we still want to hear their voice and galvanize that voice. So we'll share this over social media. We will encourage people to comment on everything that's going on so that we can bring this all together, synthesize it as we go into the APPG. Summaries of the video of these meetings will be placed again on the Future Men website. And then we'll be capturing actions and comments so that when we go into the All-Party Parliamentary Group, we are delivering a synthesized version of the voices of everybody to Andrew Gwynn, MP, who chairs the All-Party Parliamentary Group, and the parliamentarians. And the intended outcomes of this is to present, as I've said, this united voice. So we actively encourage all of you to like, share, comment, and increase the number of participants. And of course, you know, we believe firmly that if we can work together, we can make a real difference in the lives of fathers, children, and to empower families. Just as a little nudge to anybody who hasn't seen in the chat, Charlotte Grieveson has put in the details of the next All-Party Parliamentary Group, which is on the 13th, Wednesday, 13th of September. And it's going to be a hybrid meeting. So please do look out for that. Owen, back to you for what the intended impact of all of this is before we hand over to Ahmed.
Yeah, so I mean, really, just to reiterate what was said earlier on, I think there are particular outcomes around the three topic areas for the next period that Chris has already identified. I think more broadly, our intended impact, as we said at the beginning, is to kind of improve the policy landscape, both locally and nationally, for fathers so that they can be active partners and support positive child development. You know, we ourselves as a secretariat are not a research-based organization. We may not have all of the answers at this stage. What we do have is a good operating understanding of how some of these policies affect or don't affect, where there's a void, the lives of fathers of men, where there may be a need for it. So to highlight that, what we thought we would ask to do today was either ask one of our service users, one of the fathers to attend. As you can imagine, from what I said earlier on, some of the men we work with are marginalized, many of them now. There is less space for even us to do the universal work. So maybe many of the fathers we support were not quite ready at this stage to come and be a part of it. But I'm really pleased to say that one of our most experienced practitioners, Ahmed Al-Ghani, is available and is going to come in briefly now to talk to us about how his understanding as a direct service delivery practitioner, a father's project coordinator and parent program delivery officer, affects the lives of the men that he works with and supports, and how he thinks policy could be improved or how a lack of policy is affecting these service users now. So Ahmed, if you wouldn't mind joining now and give us a...
Thank you, Owen.
Thank you,
Hi,
sir.
everyone. Good to see some familiar faces. And for me, as Owen said, I work on the direct line, like front line with fathers, and I've been doing this for a number of years. So I've seen lots of fathers. I think I exceeded 100 so far. And one of the things that come into, obviously, I deliver parenting classes and also I deliver one-to-one. I work on a project called Fathers for Futures, and also a project about reducing parental conflict. Most of the fathers that come to the sessions, I quote some. I'm going to just quote some of the stuff they tell me, which can be quite shocking. I mean, one of the fathers was saying it starts really early. When I had my first baby and I was sat next to my wife, the health visitor walked in, said, "Hello, mom. How's the baby?" And didn't even look at me, almost like I didn't exist. So we know that men sometimes find it really hard to talk about their health, mental health, especially because of the gender stereotyping, so they can hide it or show it in a different way. So some of them, when another father, and I quote again, he said, he thought he was going crazy on his own because he didn't know there is a group that exists in regards to that, and actually other fathers that he can talk to. But he said, "I'm glad I came to this course. I can see lots of other crazy fathers like me," in a funny way, obviously, which is it shows that people need that help and support, but because of the stereotyping, maybe the culture, how we see men and negativity. I mean, some of the workers that refer some of the fathers to our services, they tell me, "Oh, be careful. He is very difficult. You can't really engage with them, and it's quite hard." And when I meet them in a one-to-one basis, some of them actually start crying, even in the group. They start crying and saying, "For the first time, I'm being in a group, in a place where I'm not being judged, and I can express my feeling without any concern." So therefore, we sometimes have that negativity and that feeling about them, but because fathers, men in general, maybe express depression and stress in a very different way to maybe women, it can be seen as aggression or negativity. We're not saying that there are some are not aggressive, but this is the way it is. The other stuff that I came across quite a lot, and I know it's not maybe mentioned in the agenda yet. I think um, fathers don't, when they want to see the children, the majority of them are not entitled to legal aid. And I came across a lot of fathers that spend hundreds of thousands of pounds just to see their children on the legal system, on court proceeding. And this is becoming an issue for some of them. One of them said, "I've spent all my saving and now I have access to my children. I don't have money to do anything with them." Another father said to me, "I spent up to 100 grand so far, 100,000 pounds." He said, "I'm selling my house, uh, doing everything I can to see the children. Now say I can't. It's quite hard." So these are the issues that sometimes fathers can come across. And like Owen said, that some don't obviously have because of the type of work, maybe they don't have the right information in regards to parental leave and if they're entitled to it or not. So they do miss out, and they worry about even taking the time off because they can't afford it. So there's lots of issues that I come across when it comes to fathers, and I hear it with them. And hopefully next time I'll bring some of the fathers with me so they can talk to you themselves, so you hear it from them directly.
Ahmed, do you mind if
Thank
I
you.
just ask you to elaborate a little bit? In terms of the mental health that you were talking about earlier on, and this feeling that I've heard you express many times through our reviews of your practice, that this feeling of being secondary, or this feeling that professionals don't engage with men, um, some of that's down to things we know about practice, things that could be improved through training or through representation of staff. But do you think, like we do sometimes, it's because there is no actual driver, there's no directive for some of these services to engage with men?
I think is to do. I mean, in the area where I work, we are a very diverse community. So sometimes people can't. They maybe because of the past trauma history they have. Maybe relocating some of those that come from overseas, relocating to the UK. They have lots of past trauma. and they don't know how to express themselves, and they intend to keep it inside. And is often professionals don't actually see it, and they don't easily identify it. So it would be quite good what Chris was saying earlier, and yourself, Owen, in regards to having that screening to be something that people do. I ask a very simple question sometimes to fathers while we're doing the course: how do you relax? It sounds like very simple question that you should answer, and they really don't know. I mean, including myself, sometimes I think, how do you relax? But so I think these are things that we need to look into. So it's certainly having a mechanism or a system that can allow and make it sound normal, because again, masculinity and feeling like a man, you think you really don't want to go and say, or you know what, I can't do it. But they do come to a group of men. We're all men together. They start, some of them cry, and I've seen it quite a few times, and they comfort each other, and they obviously create that friendship. So if you can make that easy for them to feel that they can do that and go to talk to someone at very early stage. Often, sadly, we ending up meeting people at a very difficult stage in their life, which makes it very hard for us to try to untangle stuff. So if it starts early, when the support can be early, and I quote one of the fathers said, "I wish I've received the support I'm receiving now much earlier." So they saying that to us, and I think if we can do that, that would be great.
And Ahmed, please feel free to come in. But I think this is where the great work that you're doing, that Paul McDaniel's doing, Elliot, and now Charlie as well on the team at Future Men. Owen, you've been doing it for, decades. But the support of the agents on that one side and increasing their capability has to be met with the opportunity. And I think I'm referring to the combi model for behavior change, if anybody's interested in that, I won't go into it, but we have to understand that the work that we're doing within this APPG space is addressing the opportunity here, because I think for the vast majority of men who become fathers, the motivation is inherent. So that is a leverage point, which by supporting their capacity to understand their own barriers or biases towards approaching services, or understanding their own physical and mental health needs, understanding how they can speak to services, and then on the other side, supporting the system and the structures that make up the system to understand that actually we need to change this to better support fathers. And again, coming back to child development, empowered families, and that this is the overall work that we're doing. Because obviously we can support fathers, but if that's all we do, that's one part, that's one piece of the puzzle. That doesn't make a jigsaw puzzle. It's only one piece.
It's a great thing just to kind of top and tail this piece of what Ahmed was saying there. And thanks so much for your contribution, Ahmed. This idea of this work in this early help space. Children's centres that have evolved into family hubs. We've got Start for Life agenda. We've got new social prescribing through the NHS. All of these policies have massive impacts on the way the UK society, particularly England and Wales, Scotland's Wasteland Directive, is set up. And whilst we have seen over the years some incremental changes in guidance or good practice guidance within these policies about how to engage men or the need to engage men, very few of these kind of policy updates or practice guidance have been made statutory within the law. We talk about things like protected characteristics. Should fatherhood be included within that? And therefore, then all of the data points that need to be captured to evidence the impact of fathers' involvement or lack thereof in the lives of the children would be hugely increased. We've seen in society already that certain segments of society are driving this agenda forward. Unfortunately, or fortunately, these tend to be from men who have a bit more agency, a bit more financial stability, have maybe better emotional regulation tools, so that when they do end up in a circumstance of becoming a dad for the first time, they are proactively seeking a space on an antenatal course. They are already driving conversations with their employers about the time they need off and the role they want to play. And if they're unhappy with their employer's response, they are skilled enough to feel confident enough that they can find another job where their circumstances are going to be better. So we are at the moment kind of being driven more by what men in that sector are asking for from their employers, rather than us as a society saying, we know any job shared is a job that's made easier. From an equalities point of view, to allow the levelling out of society that we all want to see and the opening up of opportunities for women within the professional space, we need to share the load more fairly in the domestic space. That cannot just be left to individual families to decide if that's going to work. Because once you face challenge, the services and the support around families that are required for that to work don't exist. So that's why we're moving this direction, and that's why we've chosen these three first policy areas. But of course, I can see from some of the things popping up in the chat, of course, there are a myriad more that we need to look at. So, Chris,
Ahmed, you have to run, don't you?
Yes.
I'm staying for a few minutes because I'm not moving from this room for the next meeting. So
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Ahmed, thank you so much for bringing in your practice insights and your empirical experience of working with fathers. Owen, I think we've come kind of to the conclusion of this aspect of the launch. We have obviously some questions to address. But before we go on, I just want to make everybody aware that the next installment of Agenda Dad will be Tuesday, October the 3rd at 1 p.m. We'll be sharing out the invitation via LinkedIn and through various media channels. So please do be on the lookout for that. And that will be Mark Williams presenting his work on mental health screening. And he and I will be having a discussion around where the gaps are and what his ideals would be for the next step. So we invite you all to come to that and be active in the chat and in the questions for that. So I think we can go to some of these questions now. So if I'm going to be scrolling back up, but we start with Jessica Hobbs. A tough question. How will more paternity leave, longer and better paid, be funded? This is as you rightfully state at the beginning, this is a tough question. This is a social conversation. What are the costs? What are the benefits? We'll be hearing from Jeremy Davis of Fatherhood Institute, Ian Dinwiddie of Inspiring Dads, and then a representative from one of the winners of the Working Dads Employers Award, who will be talking through the topic of fixed paternity leave. How we're going to actually pay for this is a longer term discussion, and I'm not in a position to answer that concretely. But I am part of this group who is going to be bringing this to the parliamentarians to discuss. Owen, I don't know if you have any points.
I just wanted to kind of add as well that, again, you know, like a bit like in through our practice, we say to the fathers when we offer to walk alongside them to address some of the challenges they have. This is not something I think we may not be the experts to answer. We aren't the experts to answer that question. You know, there are some great people, researchers, academics.
Owen, I believe you've frozen. Okay. But to expand on what I think Owen was going into is about shaping shaping the wider conversation, drawing in the academics, drawing in the experts to do the proper assessments and walk alongside fathers as a cohort. Owen, have I broadly?
Can I come in about something? Is that right? Sorry.
Of course, Ahmed.
But I can use a great example of one of the fathers that I've worked with, and I'm not obviously I'm not the guy to answer the money back questions, but how can we look into changing things, make it work? I remember that fathers had a family dispute. Then both of them were working. He was cautioned as a result of the family dispute. Then, because of the caution, he lost his job. They separated, they didn't stay together. The mother could not look after the children her own. She wanted him benefit because he lost his job. He wanted him benefit. Both of them became like kind of relying on the system, which it caused the system more money. While if something was done differently, maybe, and we helped them at very early stage, we probably would have saved money somehow. I mean, I'm saying that we have to be creative where it's going. So two working parents ended up claiming benefit and living on the system as a result of a dispute they both regretted, and they thought maybe if they received the help much earlier, they would have probably not gone into that dispute, and therefore would have not caused this the system the money. And if the money went to helping them at early stage, then we would probably it would have been much cheaper. I think. But this is obviously this is how we maybe need to think about stuff in the future.
I'm not. I don't know if I'm back. I don't know if my mic is back on, Chris.
Yes, it is.
Sorry, the technical difficulties of this marvelous new way of living brings us all together in the same space for an hour over a lunchtime, but can cause challenges. I think. Thanks for that response, Ahmed. He was speaking to efficiencies. You know, if we improve the systems and the setup for families, we could save ourselves money as a society. The point I was going to make was maybe a little more strategic about having the right partners come along to these meetings. The London School of Economics have done a large cost-benefit analysis for the Centre for Early Childhood, early years policy research think tank, where they've projected into the future the benefits of supporting fathers and how much it will save the exchequer over years from having more positively involved fathers contributing to the lives of their children, who are then happier and generating more in terms of tax returns to the exchequer. You know, there are myriad government departments spending various amounts of money to tackle issues that, if we had a more joined up approach to supporting families and the new makeup of families in the 21st century, where we have many more people living in blended families, where we have people living apart but still playing an active parenting role, shared or co-parenting agreements. We haven't kept up with the changes in our society that we are choosing as people with the policies we've got. So kind of like a more rounded assessment of where we are and what the financial implications could be would actually start to detail that we are wasting a lot of money in our inefficient approaches. You know, the places where they have taken a more positive approach to a more equalized shared parenting space are not places that are doing it at a loss to themselves. The Scandinavian model, some other places. These are countries that have projected an economic security to working in this way. A more productive workforce, a happier workforce with less money spent on remedial care, as Ahmed kind of highlighted there, for people who end up in dispute or conflict around their familial situations. But that's not an exhaustive answer. I think there are economists who can draw down. What we need to do is capture more data so we can make better predictions. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And that topic of capturing data is a question that Robin Hadley put about reproductive data recording at birth registration is important for long-term health and care policy. And some of this, again, we are addressing these three policy areas during this next 9 to 10 months. Thereafter, and as we build this cohesive narrative, and thinking collectively, we can shape out the next policies to move towards, assuming that we get the review and potential reform that we want from these three. And as Owen pointed out, having paternity recognized as a protected characteristic under the Equalities Act of 2010 would be a tremendous move forward, and it would shape the practice of things like data capture. So, Robin, that's obviously not an exhaustive response to your question, but you have raised that issue of data capture. Mary, you asked about will we be supporting today's move for there to be a minister for men I've been mostly busy preparing for this and have not caught up with that news. But reading through it and assuming that we have the internal discussions, we'll see how that goes, but I can't see why not on the surface of things. Barrington, what support is available to young fathers, especially from leaving care or children's services with birth registration and mental health support? So we'll be hearing from Northeast Young Dads and Lads towards the end of this program when we're talking about birth registration. They do direct work with young dads, as is in the title. So we'll be hearing from their practice point of view about how they support those young fathers who may be experiencing some of these policy challenges. David Bartlett, how to create more opportunities to learn about and reflect on fatherhood, male caring roles at schools nationally. This is a fantastic question. And again, it already, I think, is a nudge towards another area that we might look at as we go through and expand the conversations around Agenda Dad. But certainly that idea of prevention and promotion, the promotion of what good fatherhood looks like, and shaping this narrative around masculinity. Anybody who knows anything about Future Men will know that we promote 7 characteristics, which are not the preserve of men. It's about being good, rounded citizens, but we have found through practice that these 7 characteristics are areas that we often have to nudge at a delivery level for boys, young men, and men to develop. So I think, David, your question is really valid. And again, just to stress that we will be sharing all of these questions and thought provocations when we're over the website and when we're reaching out into the wider world of those working with fathers and fatherhood.
If I could just add to that point again, something that I personally am very, very passionate about, it's kind of what drew me to this organization in the first place when it was known as Working with Men, to support young teenage dads. There used to be a national teenage pregnancy strategy, ring-fence funding and approaches not only to preventing, which was a disproportionately high teenage pregnancy rate in the UK, but also with the idea that younger parents and their children require additional support to help them achieve better outcomes, to prevent them from having complex challenges in their lives. That policy has been out of existence for a long time, but teenage pregnancy hasn't gone away, nor has young parenthood or complex parental situations. But the frameworks in place for supporting them don't seem to be as robust. However, the frameworks we do have, as Catherine has pointed out, like family hubs, do have some guides. And I can see from the chat there's some interesting data they've been capturing around birth registration and attendance at antenatal appointments thereafter. And I know, as this is a government-funded initiative, hopefully that data will go back to central government and inform future developments. But I think just reflecting on the conversation we had in a full APPG meeting, many of us here have been in this space talking about many of these issues for a number of years, and what needs to happen and why we're drawing this forward is so that we can go back to the parliamentarians with some, as Chris said earlier on, good data generated and collated from all of the people who are going to contribute today, as well as some of their own bodies, and actually ask them to, speak better interdepartmentally within government, within central government, to compare notes, to share information on how much money they're spending on initiatives that impact on outcomes for children, and do some joined up thinking and review of what they're funding from what they're not funding. And education around parenthood is really, really important. We've relied on socialization of men and boys, men and women over many years to kind of prepare us for our adult roles in life. If we want to change society, we can't sit back and rely on that anymore. We need to get ahead of the game, and if we want to, as part of our new statutory relationships and sex education in school, we should not only be speaking around men and masculinity where their behavior is problematic. We should be talking in aspirational terms about the positive impacts of parenthood, rather than being afraid to mention it because we don't want young people to go out and have sex. You know, we have to be real and be positive about the benefits of parenthood, planning parenthood, the skills needed to negotiate relationships to do so, deferred gratification, good financial planning, self-care for men. All of these issues are really key. And we know that large segments of society are not getting the messages they need on this. So this is why we need you all to contribute, share research that you've done, that you've come across, whether it's from this country or abroad, so that we can build the case and present back to officers so that they can potentially go and ask questions in Parliament and inform manifestos as we come into the last year or so before the next general election is called.
Okay, I'm mindful of time, and everybody's given up their lunches to be here. Before we wrap this up, I know that there are some other questions in the chat, but a lot of them are about sort of court matters and mental health and equitable access issues. So some of these topics we will be talking about over the body of work that we're delivering. But I wanted to use this opportunity just to find out what people's thoughts were about which of the three policy routes that we're looking to tackle are of most interest. So I'm just going to create a poll.
Do you want me to do it, Chris?
Oh, it's okay. I'm on it.
All right.
Yeah.
Multifaceted.
Yeah. So we have mental health screening. We have statutory paternity leave. And also I want to thank everybody who's been active in the chat sharing information. This is also part of building this cohesive voice in and around the spaces of the APPG. So I've saved this. Oh, I beg your pardon. It doesn't seem to be active for me. So it doesn't seem like I can do that. Perhaps in the chat, people can say whether they are.
Oh, there it is. No, it's up, Chris. The poll's there.
Oh, is it?
You just had to click launch, but I just pressed it, and I think it should,
okay.
should all be able to see that now.
Okay, fantastic. While you're completing that poll, again, thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Robin, for sharing all the information that you have done. I can see Jeremy, thank you again for your engagement with all of this. And Jeremy will be one of our guest speakers.
Jeremy made a great point in the chat in response to the question about how we're going to pay for improved statutory outcomes, that, you know, it's the politicians' jobs to find the money. It's our job to put pressure on them because we know it's a good policy for families, fathers and their children to improve statutory parental leave. So I guess that's a good point, you know, and the Fatherhood Institute, Pregnant and Screwed, as he name checks in his response, have done great research on this already. And there's great evidence that exists out there. I think it's just about highlighting it again and getting a groundswell of opinion behind it and asking politicians to take a serious look at it. Far too often the refrain has been is we don't want to get too deeply involved in people's personal or familial lives, but we know that that's not true because they have statutory requirements to do so. So as Ahmed kind of alluded to earlier on, rather than waiting for things to become really, really acute and intense as a problem, let's get ahead and let's signal as a society what we want our future to look like, family layout and support for fathers and their family moving forward, rather than just responding in knee-jerk ways when problems arise. That's the aim.
Also, Jeremy has put out the link to the petition and highlighted that we need 10,000 signatures by December. So please do share and make comment on that. Charlotte, can you see? To be honest, I cannot see the results of this poll. Are you able to see them?
Yes. Do you want me to? I
Yeah,
can
if you
end
could,
the poll.
yeah, could you end the
Yeah,
poll? And
but
then
I don't know
read
if
out
it'll
what
show, if it'll continue to show the results. I'll just read them out now.
Okay.
So mental health screening got 54% of the vote, statutory paternity leave 38%, and birth registration just 8%.
Okay.
And that's
Fantastic.
everybody participated. So
no, that's fantastic. Sorry, Jonathan, you put in the chat, children not being one of the issues, that access to children is not a, no, this is not it's not that it's not a priority issue for us. The lifespan of a gendered dad is an ongoing issue. So we are tackling these three issues at this moment in time, recognizing that we have limited time with the parliamentarians in the APPG space. We've taken on these particular issues in part because there's been good movement, but there are still gaps within these policy areas. We seek to build the relationships with the parliamentarians that need to be built, which we have been doing obviously for a good number of years. But this is a new approach into that space. And then over time, we will be looking to engage this wider audience and community of interested and active parties to then find out the next topic areas to go into. It is certainly not that access to children is not a priority issue for us at all. It's just that it's not the priority at this particular moment. But thank you very much for giving me a nudge to talk to that. Owen, with 5 minutes to go, do you have any closing statements that you would like to make?
I mean, purely just primarily thank you, Chris, and Charlotte, for all of the background work you do in organising both the regular APPG and for supporting us for coming up with this new way of engaging on these subject matters and issues. I think, yes, as we kind of touched on earlier on, there are myriad issues of great import. Fathers unable to access their children, under-supported families who are doing well but need a little plug to get forward. Issues that we've decided and settled on for the first three subject areas for the beginning of this case. They by no means indicate the importance of each particular issue. It's just the way they've fallen for us. And we see this as an ongoing process. You know, we are trying to act as somewhat of a convener or an umbrella organisation within this space, using our service delivery and practice expertise, and we very much hear and have first-hand experience of supporting people who are going through those challenges. We want to have this kind of, I'll say again, proportionate universality, where we want to hit on issues that will matter to politicians. Let's be honest, sometimes politicians can be cynical. They are interested in things that their voters are interested in because that will keep them in their seats. Sometimes some of the issues we present to them are a bit too niche for their liking. So we have to balance out issues that will pique their interest. And then within that, and whilst we build momentum around fatherhood as a whole, hopefully we can address issues that are affecting more marginalized groups or particular groups who are facing more challenging extenuating circumstances. And longer term, we can build a really positive narrative around the kind of realms of equality, inclusion, the benefits of supporting both parents distinctly, both men and women, fathers and mothers, around their role as parents. Ultimately, what we all want is in 10 or 15 years, when we've probably chucked in this kind of work, that the landscape is left better than how we found it. And that requires a collective approach. So we play a small role within this. More important is your, as attendees, collective response and engagement with this process. So I thank greatly everyone who attended today. I really hope that you speak positively about it and share anything that you see across our socials that Charlotte and Chris puts out and the team puts out. And please come along in October and help us build the momentum, so that by this time next year, I'll mention it again, as we come closer to a general election, there'll be a real sense of kind of pressure and expectation that the issues that affect fathers are higher up again within the national agenda of issues of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. I just from a personal perspective, I've been really thrilled to see so many people engaging today. So again, to wrap up, we will be putting this recording onto our YouTube YouTube, then our website, sharing over social media. Please do continue to share and spread the voice of what we're trying to do. And then the next Agenda Dad meeting will be on October 3rd at 1 p.m. where Mark Williams will be talking about mental health screening. So at that, thank you very much. And we look forward to hearing everybody's view over social media. Thank you.
Thank you very much.